basically like this, and she's very upright like this. Her wrists are completely flat like this, which I don't recommend.
So your wrists, the straighter they are, the better the power transfer is. So if you keep your wrist perfectly straight, you should be able to press more weight. A lot of people can't keep their wrists totally straight. It's especially difficult on overhead press. And people will use wraps and shit to also make it a little easier to keep their wrists straighter. Since she does quite a bit of forearm training, like she does actually do training specifically for her grip, and she's a woman, so she's just not benching that much weight, like in terms of absolute weight. It's probably just a bit easier for her to keep her wrists straighter than most people, but you want your wrist to be as straight as possible.
There's a couple of reasons why, because right now this is a very vulnerable spot for your wrist. This is strong, right? Now from here,
what an idiot.
She's kind of doing this and then pressing up this way.
Jonni Shreve always does this. He won't explain what somebody is doing. He'll just say they do this and then they like do that. Like, well, what are you talking about? It's like he doesn't know how to explain. It's like he can visualize something well in his head, but he doesn't know how to actually verbalize the problem that he's trying to get across.
Here, she's kind of
a really bad coach.
Day for a coaching up. A beautiful day for a coaching up. Fixing bad form.
He also thinks he's funny when he's not, and it just makes his videos kind of more long and tedious and boring.
For my viewers, it's a beautiful day for a coaching up.
So yeah, let's just skip all this bullshit.
She uses a lot of powerlifting techniques, so let's just jump right into it right away. Again, if you want to warm up, there's a video here you can pop up, bloop, do that, great. And those are good exercises to do. Overhead passes, shoulder openers, those are really good to do to loosen up your shoulders while you do it. You know, some rotator cuff movements. A couple videos you can check out right now, check those out. But getting this right away, so we got some speed reps here. I crazily...
Speed reps? What? I don't know what he's talking about.
Arched back, and we have the rubber band.
By the way, he's saying really arched back. This would be considered meet legal depth in the IPF, and she has a very narrow grip, even for her height. So it's not like her range of motion is severely cut down. That's just how she prefers to bench.
Arched back, and we have the...
It's not even a very significant arch.
Rubber band on the bench. So right away, I'm already thinking powerlifter, right? Okay, so let's just go over this.
So I don't know what he means by powerlifter. If you're bodybuilding, an arch on a bench press makes sense. For one thing, the arch helps you target the largest portion of muscle mass on your chest. It also allows you to put your shoulders in a position where they're more able to produce force. They're also less likely to get injured because they're more stable in that position. All good things for muscle growth, I would imagine. And anybody can put a band on a bench. If you're wearing clothes or that are slippery, or if the bench, the material on the bench is kind of slippery and not very good, like at a commercial gym, why the fuck wouldn't you put a band on the bench?
Thinking powerlifter, right? Okay, so let's just go over this real quick, because I got a lot of people who ask me these questions about like proper setup for bench, barbell bench, and just want to make things very clear. So the reason why a lot of powerlifters use this is because the technique they're using, this
has nothing to do with technique. If you're sliding on the bench, it's not good. So what? It has nothing to do with arch necessarily. You have to be stable on the bench. So if you're sliding around, that's just not a good thing. You're not going to be able to lift as much weight, and you're also going to be less stable, more injury prone if you literally move around.
This having, you know, a band coming across here basically gives you grip.
Looks like he has the same bench as I do.
So you don't end up sliding off. So if you're in the bench and you're doing like, you know, powerlifter style, basically, and you're kind of getting in here, when they come down, basically get in the bench, they'll plant their feet, get this crazy arch in their back, right? Reason why their feet are...
How does he define crazy arch?
Basically under the hips. The further under the hips are, the less the butt's gonna come off the bench because your butt can't come off the bench. When
it certainly can. It's entirely personal preference. Some people prefer to have their toes on the bench with their feet further back. Some people prefer to have their feet totally flat. Usually you see a lot more shorter people and women have their toes on the ground just because it's harder for them to reach the ground. They don't have limbs that are long enough to, you know, put their feet down flat comfortably.
And you are doing competition lifting, right? Where you're doing powerlifting. Either way.
And by the way, in a lot of federations, they don't let you have toes on the ground. A lot of them, you have to have your feet flat.
We're here, and then we have this, you know, over here, pop it off, and then
we're here, and we have this over here. What the fuck is he talking about? Great coaching, dude.
Down, slow, and then we have this drive like this. So big down here, big breath in, sink it, and then they're using hips to drive. Now, that is fine and dandy for those who are actually doing powerlifting. But for you guys out there who are just trying to like build your muscle, right? Guarantee a lot of you guys are watching this because they're trying to learn how to build their chest. So is this necessary? This is not a bad thing at all. Go ahead and use it. It's gonna keep you on the bench from sliding, right? Good thing. Use it, that's fine. But use a combination of both, right? So what I mean by that is, we'll go over flat bench and we'll go to incline because you can use the same technique for both, but using a little bit of the powerlifting technique within your bench days is gonna give you a little bit more stability. But we wanna use a little bit of it. And what I mean by that, basically, we don't have to have this crazy arch on our back.
What? Okay, two things to point out. The arch is not a bad thing to begin with. It puts you in a position where you can use more of the muscle mass on your chest. Again, if you are interested in growing your chest muscles, well, if you're using more of the muscle fibers, sounds like a good thing to me. It also puts your shoulders in a position where they're better able to produce force. Obviously, one of the mechanisms that'll help trigger muscle growth is mechanical tension. If you can do the same exercise with the same amount of reps and sets, but with more weight, not only is that good for strength, but it's also good for muscle growth. So again, why wouldn't you arch? I'd also argue you're less injury prone with an arch. Again, your shoulders are just in a better, like, more stable position. Secondly, no one can arch to an extent where it's going to actually negatively impact their ability to build muscle. Nobody. Like, yeah, there's a few power lifters who are like women or in lighter weight classes who have a crazy fucking arch where they're only moving their arms like an inch. But, like, who the fuck are you talking to? Like, nobody in your audience has the flexibility where they can bend their back to such an extent where the benefits of arching are negated just because of the massive, ridiculous arch that, like, just insanely cuts down on range of motion. So, stupid. It's stupid to claim, oh yeah, don't try to do too much of an arch. Nobody can do too much of an arch. I've had a few clients, and I was teaching them to bench, like, most of them, like, literally can't arch. Like, they cannot bend their back. Especially male clients. They just don't have the fucking flexibility to do it. So why would you try to get people worried about arching too much when I'd say your average person can barely even arch at all?
And I kind of want to just show you guys what I mean. If you're watching her lift, she's benching and she has her hands basically like this, and she's very upright like this. Her wrists are completely flat like this, which I don't recommend because a couple of reasons.
Again, you want your wrists as straight as possible. So why the straighter your wrists are, the better force transfer is. Have you ever punched somebody like this? No. You want to punch somebody with a straight wrist. Same reason you want to bench with a straight wrist. It just transfers force better. Dumb. Like,
This is why, because right now, this is a very vulnerable spot for your wrist. This,
not a vulnerable spot for your wrists at all. Yeah, there's some, like, if you're holding the bar really high on your hand like he's doing, he's not even holding the fucking bar properly, which is fucking funny. If you're holding the bar really high up on your hand, then yeah, you have to, like, use that much more forearm strength to prevent the bar from bending either forward or backwards. But if you have the bar really low on your hand like you're supposed to, then no, having a straight wrist is not dangerous. And if she's able to do it safely, then what the fuck is the problem?
is stronger, right? Now from here, she's kind of
He's literally recommending people cock their wrist back for no reason.
doing this and then pressing up this way. When I watch
Yeah, do this and then press up this way. Thank you. That really explained things, Johnny. You're a great coach. Do this, not that.
her do this, I see her stomach, right? And her stomach's not necessarily engaged. When I want to engage my core, we're going to use a couple things. We're going to use a bit of that.
So when you're benching, you should be performing the Valsalva maneuver. I don't know what he means by core engagement other than that.
Show feet under our hips to keep our butt down. And what I mean by that is basically just sit yourself up on the bench, find yourself, make sure you're on a bench that's hitting flat on the ground. If it's too tall for you, basically get a couple plates, put on your feet or a riser, whatever it is. We just want to make sure that we're
So that's not necessarily good advice. Again, if you're doing recreational lifting, then sure, if it's more comfortable for you, you can put a few plates on. When I got Jasmine into weight training, she has like some back issues and mobility problems. So in order for her to bench comfortably, yeah, I put some weight plates under her feet so that she can just lie down on the bench more comfortably. But if you're, say, competing in powerlifting or something, and you know that you can't have something underneath your feet, then why would you train in that manner? So, no. And again, some people prefer having their toes on the ground. I always tell people, try to, like, get used to just having your feet flat, because I would assume that's more stable. But some people just prefer toes on the ground. So again, I don't know why he'd say that as like a rule.
our feet are on the ground, we're not kind of dangling off trying to press. So when we're here, scoot myself down a little bit in my hips. I'm gonna readjust again so my butt stays on the bench. It doesn't have to be under here like this. It can just be here, flat on the ground, or a little bit of this, at least make sure we're engaged from our feet. And then from here, finding my place on the bar. And again, making sure we
What does he mean engaged from our feet? He doesn't explain anything.
set this thing up so we're not reaching down and then setting like this. I want to already be set from here. So shoulders back and away from my ears already. And then when I grab the bench, when I grab the bar, being a little bit outside shoulders apart, I like to kind of use my thumb rule here. I'll take the smooth of the bar here and I'll go thumb away.
So if you're trying to teach the bench to somebody who's never lifted before, what I recommend is having a grip width where once you're at the bottom of the range of motion and the bar touches your chest, your forearm is perfectly vertical to the ceiling or perpendicular to the floor. That, like, is rationally probably the best grip width for most people, where they'll have the strongest bench. Obviously, based on personal preference and different leverages and joint insertions and shit that people have, you may be stronger with a narrower grip or a wider grip, but logically speaking, that should be roughly where people are strongest at. So I don't know why he's saying, oh yeah, I just have my thumbs like That's not gonna work if you're a very tall or very short or like you have weird proportions. This is not someone who like knows what they're talking about when they recommend this.
And I'm good, and I'll go a little bit more, and there's my grip. Now my shoulders are already engaged, right? And then I'm just gonna...
This is like, again, this is a fundamental problem with a lot of Jonny's advice. It's either not really useful for most people because he doesn't explain things well, or it's a lot of the stuff is actually wrong. What, like, he's just saying, what I like to do is put my thumb and then maybe a little bit... How is anybody gonna, like, use that? That works for you, but in terms of advice that most people can use who are watching, how is that really gonna help? So again, I think the advice where you want to grip width where your forearms are perpendicular to the floor when you're at the bottom of the range of motion. I think that's a lot more useful for more individuals than, this is what I like to do with my thumb.
Like extend my elbows, and now I'm here, right? I want to avoid this, because when weight's on, then I gotta reset myself like this.
You can't reset yourself. So you want to make sure the bar is in a position where you can unrack it without having to, what is it, adduct the shoulders or move your shoulders forward out of position. So yeah. But once your shoulders are out of position, you can't reset. Like, yeah, if you're only using a bar and there's no weight on, but no, you can't get back into that proper position when there's actual weight on the bar.
And then when you have to reset and do all this funky stuff, like I don't know if you're dancing or some shit, doing the wave.
Here we go with the bad humor. Thank you, Jonni, for making the video last 5 more seconds than it needs to.
Hey, what's up, guys? A lot of you guys are watching the videos not subscribed, so all you new subscribers who are watching not subscribed, do your boy a favor, subscribe to the channel and hit that post notification.
I'd recommend to not subscribe. Why does he always do that with his eyebrows? He always does this. He's always do that.
Notification button as well too, so next time I put a video, you'll be the first ones to get it. And guys, hopefully by now you like the video. So if you do, hit the like button. Back to the show. Just rough from here, and then we can control the weight down. Now remember, keep your fist, wrists, and elbows under the bar. That's what we call stacking the joints. So when the bar comes down, it stays underneath, right? And then we're pressing up. We don't have...
Why is he moving his hand up like that?
Have to have it.
By the way, he's still not holding the bar properly. I can tell the bar is too high up on his hand. He could move it down a little lower. On top of that, technically, you're supposed to squeeze like your fingers into the bar, sort of like if you're trying to crush an apple. So this is a little too small. It's smaller than a barbell, but I obviously don't have a barbell here. So Jonni Shreve is holding the bar like this, where his like tips of his fingers are touching his palm, basically. You're supposed to actually hold it like this, where your fingers are kind of crushing the bar. I do it like this, just because it feels more comfortable to me. But again, you're supposed to hold it with this kind of grip. I think if you have like really big hands, this does feel a bit awkward. I do have fairly large hands, like where I can grip a basketball. But this is technically not a correct grip. This is the grip you want. And again, he's holding the bar like really high. The bar should be as low on your palm as possible.
Go from here, then come here, and then try to push it back like this. Very crazy exaggeration, but I see it happen all the time. When we're here, now again, I'm gonna show you guys my core. What we wanna do is, I wanna engage my core.
I don't know why he's saying engage the core. Valsalva maneuver, breathe in.
When I'm pressing. Now engaging my core is basically like flexing my core. Like I wanna pretend I got this really annoying friend that's always coming in, punching me in the stomach. And I'm always trying to tense it. That, or really trying to get
No, you're supposed to perform the Valsalva maneuver. You want to breathe in and try to make your stomach as fat as possible. That's what you want to do.
Poop, it's a poop out. Last minute poop, and you're like, ah, and you gotta get out. We want that. That's what I mean by engage the core. I don't mean suck it in. Don't do a vacuum. Engage your core by flexing it. So as soon as, if you watch.
No, you want to perform the Valsalva maneuver. You want to breathe in, try to make your stomach as fat as possible.
When I flex it, I have arch my back. When I flex, it pushes me automatically to the bench. And it gives me.
This is like some Athlete X retardation. No, do not do this. You don't want to breathe out and like flex your abs. You want to breathe in, make your stomach nice and fat, and then you want to like tense your stomach and brace. That's what you want to do. You don't want to like breathe out a little bit and like try to squeeze your abs. This is Athlete X level stupid.
More power to drive. If I just keep myself like this, well, it'll be the same thing as me doing like a squat without engaging my core. I just round my back and was hoping for the best, for stability, and then just press the.
I thought Jonni Shreve knew how to perform the Valsalva maneuver. Why isn't he? Am I mixing him up with somebody? I thought he literally knew how to perform the Valsalva maneuver. This is retarded. Yeah, like, holy crap. I knew he wasn't a good coach before, but like, I mean, dear God, this is literally Athlete X type information.
This thing up. So when you do have the bar and you're in proper position and all you have to do is just extend your elbows, pull it out a little bit, and then let it count down. Say it's for 2 count, 1,000.
So you, again, this may come down to a little bit of personal preference, but what I like to do and what most people would recommend is rather than having the bar in a position where it's, where in order to unrack it, you have to push out, what you want, ideally, if, you know, not every bench is going to have the ideal setup for you because the holes are at a certain space and shit. But ideally what you want is to actually have a completely extended elbow. You want your arm straight, and in order to lift the bar off the bench, you lift up with your legs and lift your butt off the bench. That lifts the bar out. That way you don't have to waste any energy and possibly lose your position while trying to lift the bar off. Then you can keep your hands totally straight. You lose as little energy as possible, and it's just more efficient rather than like literally pushing the bar out with like your triceps. So that's ideal in my opinion. Again, people are going to have their own preferences when it comes to liftoff, but ideally you want your arms to be totally straight. And then in order to lift the bar off the hooks, you push with your legs, lift your butt off the bench. That gives you that little extra inch to get over the hooks. And then you can go into position.
So when you do have the bar and you're in proper position and all you have to do is just extend your elbows.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. That wastes energy. It's less efficient.
Pull it out a little bit.
And you're more likely to lose proper pressing position.
And then let it count down. Say it's for 2 count, 1,001, 1,002. Deep breath in, and then we're, right? We're pushing through the core. We're not keeping your back arched like this the entire time. We're keeping your core engaged. I want you to think about pushing yourself into the bench.
Okay, so yeah. You should kind of think about, I don't think this is quite the right cue, pushing yourself into the bench. A better cue is pushing yourself away from the bar. If you push yourself away from the bar, it kind of gets you into the mindset of making sure you're very stable against the bench. Again, one thing that's really going to fuck up your bench press is not being stable, not being able to brace properly, kind of losing your position and sliding around. if you push yourself away from the bar, that means you kind of have to make sure you maintain that position you have in the bench. So it's not that you want to push yourself into the bench, you want to push yourself away from the bar. I think that's a bit of a better kind of cue. And that's a cue that I've actually heard. I've never heard of push yourself into the bench. I've heard push yourself away from the bar. Don't think I've ever heard anybody recommend that technique cue, push yourself into the bench. It works, but I think that's a bit of a better cue.
Like into the ground. Pretend this bar's not going anywhere and the bench is actually going backwards. Bar's not going anywhere and the bench is actually going backwards, right? So this is what we're doing from here and then pressing up. And you see when I engage my core is doing the whole time from here.
I don't know what the fuck he means, core doing anything. That doesn't make any sense to me. This, again, a consistent problem that Jonni has is he does not explain anything. I think the way he processes information and learns and everything is extremely visual. So he's like unable to explain what he actually wants to get across. And if it's not visually obvious, like what a lot of these things are, I have no idea what he's talking about. Like, what the fuck does he mean with, watch what my core's doing? I see your stomach. Just, like, what are you doing?
And I'm pressing, controlling it down, and then when I'm breathing.
Yeah, I literally have no idea what he's talking about. Dumbbell bench press, barbell bench is better than dumbbell bench. There's two main reasons why barbell bench is better than dumbbell bench. First reason is it's more stable, so you're able to lift more weight just because it's a far more stable exercise. Secondly, it's a lot easier to incrementally load. So with dumbbells, standard dumbbells anyway, they go up by 5 pounds each dumbbell. So if you're going to increase the weight on a standard dumbbell, you have to go up by 10-pound increments across both arms. Whereas if you're using barbells, it's only 5-pound increments across both arms. And if you're using microplates, then even less. You can go up by like 1/4 of a pound or 1/2 pound increments, like shit like that. If you have dumbbell handles, you can do that, and you can kind of get over that shortcoming. But again, just because it requires more stability, that's a huge downside to dumbbell bench press. Oh yeah, another big thing with dumbbells. If you get stronger with dumbbells and you get pretty strong at pressing, range of motion decreases, and it just becomes very awkward and unwieldy. So, like, if you've ever gotten strong enough to use, like, the 120-pound dumbbells or more at a gym, they're just very fucking weird and awkward to use, and the size of the dumbbell, like, physically gets in your way, whereas that's never a problem with a barbell. So, barbell bench, way better. Dumbbells are a good accessory movement where you can add in additional volume, and they're not quite as fatiguing as a barbell bench, so they're, again, a good accessory lift, but no, barbell bench is a much better lift than dumbbell bench.
Breathing through here, I'm contracting through my core. So your breathing and your core need to stay in the same page. Similar setup when we're...
Your breathing and your core has to stay in the same page. Does anybody know what the fuck he means by that? That just sounds like stupid gobbledygook to me. Again, you should be performing the Valsalva maneuver when you're lifting, and that includes on the bench. Breathe in, try to make yourself as fat as possible, and brace. That's what you're supposed to do. Make sure your breathing and your core are on the same page. Like, what the fuck does that mean?
We're doing incline bench. A lot of times I see the same technique as powerlifters use a little too much, and it's almost like we're standing. So we don't really necessarily need this. I mean, if you want to use it, you go right ahead. But so again, when we're...
Well, it would be pointless to use the band because the seat would be upright and preventing you from sliding.
Doing incline bench, obviously, you know, if you're maybe at a gym.
No, I don't think dumbbells are a safer movement necessarily. Again, they're less stable, and if you're using a significant amount of weight, weight is going to be the biggest determining factor when it comes to injury risk on practically any lift. If you're sufficiently strong, you're going to be able to use dumbbells that are heavy enough where you could hurt yourself. And especially when they get heavier, they're more unwieldy, they're harder to manage. I've seen people pull their pecs and hurt their shoulders doing dumbbell presses, so yeah, I don't think they're really much safer. I have a cat here who needs some rubs. So I'm going to rub this cat as we listen to Jonni Shreve.
Where the bench is already set up, like a incline bench press setup, not like this. You'll probably already have this part inclined, just to make sure you don't slide off the bench. If you don't know that by now, if you have one of these only, you want to use that for that reason. Anyway, setting yourself back, I was saying before, we don't want to do too much of this whole thing here, because then we look like this, and this is really actually not that good at all. This is
He doesn't say anything. He just says, we don't want to do too much of this. Too much of what? Like, explain to us what you're doing wrong here. How... He never explains fucking anything. So, yeah, it's pointless putting your feet all the way back here. Again, you want to be able to push into the floor. So, no shit, you don't want your feet back behind you. All right.
very awkward and weird, right? Rule of thumb, just kind of sit down as if you're squatting. If I could just lean like this and sit up and squat. If I can squat, that's probably the easiest kind of way to...
Okay, so I can tell you there's two problems here right away. I don't know why he does this. The seat should be all the way up. It shouldn't, like, he has it up a little bit. It should be up as high as it can go. Because if you're going to use a sufficient, like, a lot of weight, as you get stronger, this just isn't going to hold you still. So you can still slide off and slide out of position while pressing. You want the seat to be as upright as you can get it, because that will prevent you from sliding and make you as stable as possible. Another big problem that people have with incline pressing is they don't dig their ass all the way into the seat. And what happens is they'll sit in a comfortable manner where their ass is like maybe up here. Then when they unrack like maybe 200, 300 pounds when they get strong, all that weight going down on them is going to make them shift and slide down. And then they're going to lose their, stronger position. And then it's going to feel awkward and they're not going to lift as heavy. So you want to make sure the seat is as high up as you can. And you want to really sink your ass into the seat. Don't try to sit comfortably. Try to just sink your ass as far into the seat as possible so that when weight is bearing down on you, you can't slide or shift at all.
And squat. If I can squat, that's probably the easiest kind of way to gauge yourself in terms of where I should put my feet. My feet underneath me. If you think about like my center of mass, if I was going to squat in this position and stay.
So this is pretty decent advice. Like, yeah, okay. Yeah, you want to be able to push off with your legs. Your legs are really important for stability on a pressing movement, and you want to be able to push into the floor so that you have stability. So yeah, being in a position where you can like squat yourself up, that kind of makes sense, but really the deal here is you want to be able to push off with your legs when you're pressing. So not bad advice, but he should have maybe just pointed out why you want to be in like a squatting position.
Standing up, I can stand up perfectly fine. So now I'm going to basically set myself back.
Do you guys want me to do technique videos and all this shit? I could. I can do it better than fucking Jonni Shreve.
And right here, and right now my feet are where they need to be for good stability. Now from floor to core, engaging my core. Remember, again, shoulders back and away. So we get...
Like you can tell the seat, you can tell right away he's able to shift down. So again, he should have the seat up more.
So kind of set yourself up. You can do the whole shoulders back and away from your ears. So you're already having pressure on that bench. Line your hands up, right?
Shoulders away from the ears. Okay, I think what he's saying is you should drop your shoulders down like this, what you want to make sure you do is pinch your shoulder blades together. You don't necessarily have to lower your shoulders. That's going to be personal preference on how you prefer to bench, but some people prefer their shoulders really low. Some people prefer it more neutral, but you just want to make sure you pinch your shoulder blades together. And overall, the setup on the incline bench should be the same as on the flat bench overall, just with some slight differences.
And then we're gonna unrack by just extending the elbows, and then from
So in this circumstance, extending the elbows is probably okay, because you want to make sure your ass is sunk into the bench, like really sunk in, so that you don't shift. It's not a problem on a flat bench, but it is a problem on a incline bench. So that's the one that's the one time where, yeah, you do just want to press the bar out. Otherwise, if you have a partner, what you can maybe do is just have your partner lift it out for you. But yeah, that's the one time where, like, actually pressing it out a little bit is fine.
here again, this needs to just drop down to the top of my chest. We're just gonna direct this in terms of like gravity, controlling it on the way down, making sure the elbows basically, wrist and elbows are gonna stack the joints. So down from here and controlling the core, and then we're.
So his bar path is not quite right. You might be able to argue with the angle he's at. Like the camera angle, it's hard to tell, but it looks like, I'll just use the thing. It looks like if this is straight down, it looks like his hands are in front of his elbow, when his elbow should be underneath the bar. So he's kind of like doing a JM press or a skull crusher up. What you want is to, like, yeah, stack the joint. He'd probably want his elbow out here. Again, this is at an angle, so it's hard to tell. But similar to the bench, you want to make sure your joints are stacked where your elbow is basically underneath the barbell. Otherwise, you're going to be doing like a skull crusher or a JM press up, and it's not ideal. Bar path is going to be determined largely by grip width and degree of arch on the bench, just like a flat bench. So if you have a wider grip, you're probably going to have a higher touch point on your chest. And if you have a flatter back, that's also probably going to result in a higher touch point. If you have a narrower grip and more of an arch, you're probably going to have a lower touch point. That's just how it works. So him saying, yeah, I bring the bar like high up on my chest, that's not necessarily going to be right for every individual. He has a pretty narrow grip width, so if his grip width was like wider, like, you know, out to here, it's cut off on this picture, he'd probably have a lower touch point. I have a relatively low touch point because I think my grip width is almost exactly like his. So because of my like narrower grip width, my touch point is pretty low on my chest. So again, it's hard to tell from the angle, but it looks like he's touching a little too high on his chest. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
Controlling the core, and then we're pressing up again. Again, coming down, making sure the elbows stay under the bar the entire.
Actually, yeah, even this angle, it actually kind of looks. It actually looks like his elbows are too far in front of the bar.
Time, and then we're pressing up. Now, I've said a couple times before, do you need to touch your chest? Do you need to come?
Yeah, this guy's a trainer in real life. He does, I think, both in-person and online coaching. Actually, he does do in-person coaching. I've seen him do it on his channel. Really bad trainer. He's terrible. His biggest problem, in my opinion, is his inability to explain anything. And then his second biggest problem is he tells people to do shit the wrong way, oftentimes.
A little higher in the chest. You can touch your chest if you have the mobility for it, but you could also come about, I would say, an inch off your chest because it's still engaging your chest, to be honest.
I would say the majority of the time when people have mobility issues on the incline press, their grip is just too wide and they try to flare their elbows out a bit too much. Yeah, the higher you go on an incline, the more you need that shoulder mobility to have a wider grip and have your elbows flared out more. So if they would just pick a narrower grip and have that lower touch point where they tuck their elbows in a bit more, they'd probably be able to touch their chest just fine.
When you have it a little bit off of your chest, a tiny bit, I'm not saying this much, I'm saying like an inch off your chest, you're keeping the load on the chest the entire time. Now, if you're touching your chest, you should not take the load off your chest. We're not doing the powerlifting type technique where we're coming down here and then loading on the chest and then springing it up. We're not doing that. If you're going to touch your chest, we're tapping the chest, we're still engaged, and then we're pushing up.
I don't know what he means by powerlifting. So for one thing, powerlifters don't even really practice the incline press because it's not a requisite lift and it has pretty much zero carryover to the flat bench. So powerlifters usually just don't even do incline press. Incline press is really a bodybuilding thing. Even for most sports, like there's no benefit with having that kind of in between of overhead and flat. So the only people who really train the incline press is bodybuilders. So I don't know what he means by powerlifting style incline press. It just doesn't really make any fucking sense. You do not want to... What he did there was he like exhaled, sunk his chest in, and he kind of like tried to pop his chest up to give him some like extra leverage out. That's not a good idea. You should not do that. You should inhale. You should keep your chest as high up as you can and press up and maintain that Valsalva maneuver. Again, I don't know where he's getting this from. That's not a powerlifting technique.
Now we're looking at how far away our hands should be. Well, there's a couple things that science basically says. Yes, further away is going to be a little bit more optimal in terms of chest activation. But again, the longer you do the super wide grip, the more danger your shoulders can be in terms of getting injured.
I wouldn't say it's a shoulder injury issue necessarily. Grip width, you can have issues with shoulder pain with a narrow or wide grip. I was actually having a lot of shoulder pain with a narrow grip on the bench. I had to widen my grip a little bit. The issue with a wider grip is risk of injury to your pec. So if you have a very wide grip, that's going to put a lot more pressure on your tendon, where your pec attaches to the humerus. So that's where the real injury risk is. Usually when you're going to get shoulder pain on a bench, it's not going to be like some kind of acute injury where like, ow, something popped or some shit. It's usually going to be a repetitive stress issue where if you're benching in a way that kind of puts a little bit too much stress on your shoulder in an awkward way, it's going to build up over time, and you're going to notice when you try to accumulate for weeks and weeks, by the end of an accumulation phase, like you're really fucked up and your shoulders are just bothering you. That's usually the type of injury you see with just improper grip width on a bench. It's not some kind of acute injury problem where, oh yeah, fuck, I popped something because my grip was too wide. No, it's usually you're going to tear your pec, or pec tears are more common with a wider grip.
So the best rule of thumb would be to be like a little bit of like an in-between. So for me, I used to go from here.
So, holy fuck, again, bad advice. Again, doesn't make sense. This isn't even really advice. It's just, this is what I do. So what you want is to be in a position with your grip width where your forearms are perpendicular to the floor or pointing straight up when you're at the bottom of the range of motion. It's generally where you want to be. Again, everybody's going to have their own personal preference. You might be stronger with a wider or a narrower grip. I'm a bit stronger with a slightly narrower grip, but that's where you want to start. And then once you're kind of used to the movement, then maybe deviate and, experiment with a wider or narrower grip. But just like with a flat bench, try to be in a position with your grip width where your forearms are pointed straight up to the ceiling when you're at the bottom of the range of motion.
I used to be this type of bench kind of guy back in the day. Now my bench is inside of this smooth part. I call it the smooth. It's inside of the smooth, and that's where I find myself to be comfortable.
It's inside the smooth.
Great activation of my chest, and then I get a little more help from my triceps as well too. And then I can definitely stack the joints that much better. Remember, fists, wrists, and
okay, sure, yeah.
Elbows underneath, and then pressing up. Now, if I'm worried about not getting as much of my chest being activated in terms of doing a wider grip, I can make up for that in my accessory work, like your flies. So don't worry too much about, how wide.
Grip width, thank you. Grip width does not really affect chest activation as much as you'd think. So I wouldn't really worry about it. Obviously, you are going to be a little bit more tricep dominant with a narrower grip, but it doesn't impact it as much as you'd think.
Or narrow should be.
Like, really, at the end of the day, a grip width that feels comfortable for you, where you can avoid injury and your shoulders and everything feel fine, that's the most important thing. The biggest factor with building a big chest and a big bench is going to be just being able to press frequently. So just choose a grip width that feels comfortable for you, that doesn't aggravate your shoulders or other joints. It shouldn't just be, oh, well, a wider grip technically activates your chest more.
Finding a nice, good neutral grip of, I would say, here's my shoulder width apart, a little outside shoulder width. For me, or for most people, will be pretty good. If you guys apply any of these tips to your training, let me know about it in the comment section below. Anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed the video.
Wow, you literally don't know what you're talking about. You don't even know how to hold the bar properly. You are literally as bad as Athlean X, not even telling people to use the Valsalva maneuver. There we go. Well, thank you, Jonni, for another ridiculous fucking video. He seems to be particularly bad with pressing movements. He also made an overhead press video that was fucking stupid. He literally demonstrated how not to do a overhead press using proper form. So he used proper form and then explained, this is how you shouldn't do it. It was amazing. I don't think I've ever seen anybody do that before.